The Torah aspires for a world of peace, a world of joy. So how is it possible then that we see Jews who believe in God and carry weapons in this latest war we're in? Isn't it a contradiction to see spiritual leaders, those we would think of as spiritual, whom we call rabbis, for example, wearing a military uniform? There aren't many rabbis who have shown the military side of Israel at this time, and at the same time they speak about the Torah. We have a guest who accomplished that before millions. Please welcome Rabbi Yosef Garmon.
Shalom, Jacob, and greetings to all listeners on every channel and network. Thank you for this important space.
Thank you, Rav. May I introduce him to the audience? He was the chief rabbi of Guatemala for several years, founder of the International Humanitarian Coalition, author of books in 2021, and this is one of the mind blows. He was named one of the 40 most influential pro-Israel Latin American leaders. He served as a tank commander in the Israel Defense Forces and, in the recent war, spent hundreds of days as a reservist. He, in fact, as you can see from his relationships and army ranks, is an officer in the Israeli army, and he recently received his rank of captain and RAV. I would like to start by asking, isn't that a contradiction? To say that we aspire to this prophecy of Isaiah, that there will be no more weapons? How is it possible to do all this while carrying a weapon?
That's a great question, and I've always wondered the same. I didn't want to join the army. My aspiration has always been humanitarian. It's global for everyone, far from wars. And as you mentioned, the prophecies, beyond that, living in a utopia, there are prophecies, and there was even a person who sold tickets to see the prophecy fulfilled. That the wolf can live in peace with the lamb, and people would buy tickets and show up. Right, that's because they saw the lamb with the wolf. They asked how he managed it, and he said, it's simple. I put them together and bring a new lamb every morning. Why am I telling this? Because we like to think about peace and a utopian world, about fulfilled prophecies. And that's how I thought, and that's how we should think. As Golda Meir said, if Hamas and the Palestinians lay down arms, war ends. If Israel lays down arms, Israel ends. We saw it on October 7th, since everyone talks about that day, not October 6th or 5th. On those days, Israel gave the Palestinians work permits, food, money, cement, things they didn't have. In 2005, Israel gave the entire Gaza Strip to Palestine, believing it would be fine after it was freed. That was the idea they always talk about, that we thought if we gave them everything, everything would be fine. And unfortunately, they showed the complete opposite, because monsters don't reason like humans, and we have to carry weapons. We have to, hopefully again. Every day I think and want and wish for the war to end and for things to return to normal. But unfortunately, that's not the case with what's around Israel. If we completely put down our weapons, there will be no Israel. And we're here not to gain more territory, not to make more money, not for all the reasons wars have happened throughout history, always, but simply to be able to live in peace. Both Jews and non-Jews who live in Israel, 20% of the Israeli population is Arab, live very well in Israel. They do everything, judging, doctoring, serving in parliament. We have nothing against anyone. I am not against Arabs. I maintain interreligious dialogue with Muslim, Christian, Buddhist leaders, with everyone. We want, aspire to, work for, and act for peace constantly. Let me remind you that Israel signed peace agreements with the United Arab Emirates, Sudan, Bahrain, Morocco, Egypt, and earlier with Jordan. It was set to be signed with Saudi Arabia and others, but October 7th delayed it. We want to resume that process. So, the army in Israel is not called the attack army. We don't want to attack. It's called the defense army. We want to defend ourselves. We don't want to attack. We don't want to conquer. We don't want to colonize. When some people accuse us of that, Israel is 0.4% of the Middle East, 0.05% of the planet, and they accuse us of colonizing. We're among the world's smallest countries, ranked 154th. So, what am I saying? And your question can also open more windows, because there is the ultra-Orthodox part that apparently doesn't want to participate in the army. And that's a pretty important issue, but I think to sum it up in one word, we believe in God, but God believes in us too. And the combination of the spiritual part, where we pray, study, and act, also always has to be together with the material part. That is our own effort to defend ourselves from those who want to kill us. To succeed in Israel, you need to create technology and do good for the world. In the Palestinian Authority, is success defined by killing Jews? Is that how you earn money? And that's the big difference. People need to understand that we have no other choice. We don't want to win wars, we don't want to start wars, we don't want to have them. But unfortunately, when we're forced to, and we saw what happened throughout history when Israel didn't have an army, with the Cossacks before the Inquisition and long before that, against all the great empires that always tried to wipe us out, and sometimes, unfortunately, they almost succeeded. But today, thank God, we have a state of Israel. We have an army, and let me tell you something, it's an army with a very strict code of ethics, very, very strict. You know that, right? It's not that we risk our own lives to avoid the loss of innocent lives. We announce our arrival before entering a place unlike any other army. We're not exactly the most humane army. We're the sole participants in that competition.
I wanted to go straight to the question, to the topic you brought up about Pakistan. Don't be a NAM party, because we're not a party of athletes but the ultra-Orthodox side. So how is it possible if they are not nourished by the same Torah? And so one would think that the noblest thing is that, right? Like the idea of being like a lamb going to the slaughter. Continue being the same Jew as always, a persecuted Jew, true, but one who avoided the issues of war and fighting. Why not? Simply having this attitude of, I don't want to say giving up, but of continuing to be the Jew of the last 2,000 years, who didn't have a way to defend himself, and that's it. Just continue this tradition of being defenseless.
Look, actually, right now the day is almost over. But remembering the 90 years since Rav Kook, when Rabbi Kook passed away, the great rabbi, the first chief rabbi who was born in Israel, who established the chief rabbinate in Israel 90 years ago, Rabbi Kook. He was a very orthodox rabbi on one hand, very strict on one side. People who read his stories, his halakot, his laws, see that he was very strict on one side. But he knew how to connect not just words, but ideas, both the secular with the religious, the nationalist with the others. Also, because in some way we can say there is a tension about whether Judaism is a religion or a nation. So there are many people who tell you today, and they've told me, we're not anti-Semites, we're not against Jews, we're only against Zionists. They tell you this and think, here we're safe, we're fine, but they don't know that Zionism didn't start now. Zionism started thousands of years ago. When God tells Abraham that his descendants will be in Israel, he promises him the land. And after that, when they leave Egypt, the idea is always to reach Israel. And when they're in Israel and build the temple later, unfortunately, it gets destroyed. But from then on, in their prayers 3 times a day, they say that they want to return to Zion. We want to go back to Zion. Zionism comes from Zion. So does that mean Judaism is a religion and a nation? Isn't that a contradiction? We had a Jewish state thousands of years ago. King David established Jerusalem as his capital about 2,887 years ago, and the Jewish state was there. Judaism was a nation and also a religion. They are two things that don't contradict each other, but for some people, the Jews, if it's a nation, the Orthodox say it can threaten what is a religion. That's why the Orthodox usually define Judaism as a religion. It doesn't matter where you are in exile in the United States, in Africa, or in Israel, it has to be the same. And when they talk about this, there's something very deep here, but I'll try to say it in simple words. What is the truth of the conflict? Because we have to understand something. In the Israeli army, in every unit, there's a rabbi, and he is at the strictest level there is. You can't cook dairy in any of the kitchens, in any of the army's kitchens, to avoid confusion, to avoid problems. Okay, In every part of the case, each person can receive, according to the seal he wants, a very high level. There are 3 prayers a day. There is quite a bit of religion within the army, and a religious person can be religious and keep his religious identity within the army. There's no problem at all, studying and everything. So where is the problem? The problem is, what is the belief of Judaism? Is it a passive belief? I pray, I study, God will give me everything. Like the people of Israel in Egypt, when they left, they received everything from God, right? Does the religion require you to be active? Let's take 2 characters, Noah and Moses. Noah builds the ark to save himself from the flood and does everything God commands him. On the other hand, Moses always argues, but God's ideal character is Moses, not Noah, because he blames Noah for the flood and says Moses was the most faithful. Because God doesn't expect you to just listen to bad news like a Greek tragedy, but to try and fight to change it. And that's what Moses does against God. Apparently he tells God to erase him from his book, but in the end he manages to change the decree. And Jonah and other prophets in history. What we saw in the successful prophecy of Judaism is the one that does not come true. Does that mean Judaism isn't about accepting evil or asking why is there evil? Since we can't understand it because God doesn't want us to. If we understand it, we'll accept and justify it, so we won't change it, but God wants you to change it. When you see a hungry child, you can reason and come up with a theory that he is a reincarnation of Amalek or someone else, and that's why he has to be punished with hunger. God says, don't philosophize. If you see a hungry child, feed him. And that's why the Jewish religion is active. Now some people think it's not, that it's passive. And being in the army means being active, being in Israel. And that's what happened with Zionism, in a way. If the Mashiach hasn't come yet, then how can you build the state of Israel? How can you go up to Israel? How can you actively hasten the Messianic coming? You can't. That's why many of the Ultra-Orthodox see the army as a threat, we could say a theological threat. It's the belief that I do my part and God handles the rest, while the army requires active participation. I think the time has come to understand that one does not contradict the other. That is, we believe in God, as the verse says, you have to say that you have strength, but remember that the strength comes from God, from Zajarta. You will remember that he gave you the strength, but don't say that you didn't have strength, because if you say you don't have strength, you lack faith in God who believes in you and gave you strength. So we have to see how we can connect both things without losing either one. Judaism is a religion and a nation. That's why when someone says, I am anti-Zionist, they are also anti-Jewish, because Zionism has always been connected with Judaism. Aren't they 2 different things? And when we understand that, I think we can reach a solution here, because that's the most complicated point. And that's why I mentioned Rav Kook, because he knew how to connect what is called the Dion, which connects the word Dati, religious, and Leumi, nationalist, which can be both. And yes, there was some who complained against Rav Kook and said to him, Rav Kook, do you spend a lot of time with the Halutzim, with the pioneers who are secular? They don't even celebrate birthdays or anything. And they said to Rav Kook, it's written, there are 2 verses that use the word Nahnu. Nahnu, in Hebrew it means we, but Nahnu is missing a letter. It's Nahnu, it says Nahnu, Nabo. Halutzin are the pioneers who came to Israel at the beginning before the state of Israel, and Nahnu Pasanum Verashanu. We are wicked. So they said, Rav Kook, here is proof from the Bible that the Halutzin are wicked. And Rav Kook said, the Bible mentions the word Nahnu a 3rd time, saying Kulanu bnei and Shehad Nahnu. We are all children of the same Father, meaning we are brothers, secular, religious. Some believe more, some believe less. We can't forget that despite the differences, we have the same origin. I think if we know this, within a family we can have arguments, but we always have to remember it. That's right.
Rav Kook discusses the same dialectic in his book that you mentioned, and I do too. That's why I hesitate to call Judaism a religion, as that would undervalue what it truly is. But that war will detonate. That's what he wrote at the beginning of his book. That war detonates like the souls of King David, of the biblical characters. How is that possible? Well, that's exactly what you just explained, because it's about returning to how the nation state was, which was lost for 2,000 years. I want to ask you a question. Okay, you explained how it's not just about religion, but there's another extreme that you also see, which is often criticized on social media, that Israel has this aspiration that is only religious, national religious, but to the point of saying Israel will conquer Gaza and form a greater Israel. And it's like, I don't know, there's this fear that things will go to an extreme. They see it as an extreme. Maybe that's your position, maybe not. That's why I'm asking. What do you think, Rav? Is there something to be afraid of about that? Is it true? Is it false? How would you answer those who are so afraid of such a thing?
Look, somehow in Israel, there are a lot of people who write to me, look, there's a protest, look, there's this, look, there's that. We have to understand in Israel, we also have not just all the extremes, but we have quite a few opinions. Okay, they say 2 Jews, 3 opinions. I think there are even more. I mean, I even argue with myself sometimes, and these are things we have to understand. Why is Israel considered the hardest country for peace? Is it only because of the Arabs? How many Jews are there in Israel? How many inhabitants? In total, 10 million. Out of those 10 million, I could give you the details, but we don't have time. 15 million from different sects. That is if we leave out the Russians and the Greek Orthodox, the Christians, those who live in different places, the different Arabs, the Arab Christians, the Christian Muslims, everything that's in Israel, and we focus only on the Jews. Apart from the right and left, apart from the secular and religious, the secular religious and the religious nationalists, and the Atmer, and from Mea Shearim and Neturei Karta, and the Hasidic and Breslov and Chabad and Tzanz and Vishnitz and Rakmas Rivka, and thousands of other Hasidim. What are the names of the different Hasidic groups that are in all those places? Without mentioning Ashkenazim, Sephardim, or the Yemenites, including Dardaim, Shami, Baladim, plus Halabim, Ethiopians, and Russians. Look, here we are. We've come from 136 different countries. That was the argument Netanyahu used to convince Pfizer to bring the COVID vaccine here, because it has genes from all over the world in such a small place. And it's true. No, I'm not talking about the vaccine, but it's true that we're here. We have all kinds of opinions here. So I think first we have to understand that complicated map of what Israel is. Now we also have to understand that in 2005, I remember I was still there. Ariel Sharon previously gave the Gaza Strip area of Gush Katif to the Palestinians, hoping for peace, but nothing changed. We didn't get peace. Instead, it turned into territory and a base of terror against Israel. Much of the reason for October 7, unfortunately, is because of that handover of Gush Katif. So we have to understand that when they say we're going to return that part to Israel, it's because it didn't work. It makes sense. I mean, if we get into all of this, it makes sense. Now, Hamas has to understand what it did on October 7th, and all the radicals have to understand for the good of the world. That acts of terror are so vulgar, so there are no words. They won't get a Palestinian state as a reward. Instead, they'll be punished and lose land. Because the loss of land is the only thing that threatens those monsters. They don't care about dying, losing, or stealing from their people to create more terror and buy more weapons. They simply don't care about anything. We have to understand that if the world doesn't realize that if those radicals win, everyone in the world will lose. Because the theology of Islam, of spreading Islam, of dividing the world into 3, they cannot theologically accept a government that is not Islamic ruling over them. And it doesn't matter if it's in Belgium, in London, in Spain, or in Israel. It's the same. They hate Christians just as much as they hate Jews. We have to understand this, and that's why we have to eradicate, we have to eliminate the power of Hamas. Now, what exactly is the way to do it? I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but we have to understand that here Israel never wanted to conquer Israel. As I said before, it's one of the smallest countries in the world, but unfortunately, we have quite a few challenges that we have to understand. And that's why we're a bit in Syria to protect the northern part, from there a bit in Lebanon, a bit for the good of the world as well. But I'm sure that Israel is fighting a war for the whole world against those radicals, because there are many radicals in the world who are waiting to see what will happen with Hamas if they see that Hamas was eliminated. After what happened on October 7th, will they think 1,000 times before doing something similar? But if they see that the world is going to reward Hamas and recognize a state for this Hamas and let them be part of the government, they will rise up all over the world to ask for the same thing. In Paris too, and in Belgium, and as I said, in the United States and in Australia and in Africa, they will rise up everywhere. People worldwide need to move beyond just focusing on Israel-Palestinians. The real issue is light versus darkness. Where do you stand? We were there together with the president, the former president of Colombia. What did he say? We must understand that Hamas is a global problem, not just Israel's. Israel's war against Hamas is benefiting the world. Many people worldwide understand this. I believe there's more philo-Semitism and love for Israel than anti-Semitism, and I see much support for Israel globally. Let me tell you a quick short story. I just published it because someone wrote to me about it. From there, he was going to arrive in Israel, where there would be a march of nations during Sukkot, as they always do. So my friend and I went to do a humanitarian project in Papua New Guinea. There's nothing new there. It's one of the oldest countries with very interesting cultures. There were cannibals until recently, and we were sitting with some people, and one of them told us that his father used to eat his enemies, and he said, if he were here, maybe he would have eaten you. We are food, just things to him. So since we didn't know whether to be afraid or not, because you never know, those people are very complicated, they're very special people. Suddenly he tells us that his father is coming, and we froze like ice cream.
They didn't put salt on me?
Yeah, imagine we became the dish on the dinner menu instead of being guests. When the dad arrived, he asked us, where did we come from and this? And we thought he was asking about the origin of his food. And when he heard that we were from Israel, he started kissing us, hugging us. He got so emotional. We were just eating, that's all. The enemies. Israel can never be our enemy. If God loves Israel so much, who can hate Israel? We love Israel, and these are things I found in so many places around the world. There's so much love for Israel. And I think this love is not just a religious love, it's a deep love. It recognizes Israel as part of the solution for both the world and the Arabs. If the world wants to recognize a Palestinian state, so what? I also recognize the Palestinian state. The problem is that the Palestinians don't recognize it because they don't want Netanyahu. And everyone told them so many times, just recognize a Jewish state next to you and we'll recognize a Palestinian state for you. And they said no, because theologically they can't accept even a centimeter called Israel in Israel because it threatens their theology. They will never recognize Israel, and that's why they also don't want to recognize or have a Palestinian state, because they would have to recognize a Jewish state, and they don't want to do that. They've already said no. Since the 1936 Peel Commission, then in 47, and at every chance after, even Olmec offered them the Western Wall, and they said no. So, on one side, there are extremists in Israel, but we have to understand that those extremists were also born from Palestinian extremists who always said no to everything and responded with terror. So the other side in Israel said, gentlemen, there is no solution here if we keep giving and giving. Everyone who lived next to Gaza were the most left-wing people in Israel, the people who worked the hardest for peace. Mr. Lifshitz brought people in and gave them work and gave them everything, and they themselves killed him. I mean, I heard people, those kibbutzim who were as leftist as possible. On the other hand, they said October 7th changed us. We understood that giving and giving will only create more and more fear, so we have to realize that we need to think of another solution here. If they don't improve education, if they won't stop paying to kill Jews, are we wrong?
As the translator, for a healthy city in the world. I believe there are many good people, and that's why it gives me faith that we are going to succeed, that this world, in the peace we are living in, then
Thank you. I'll end with Rav Kook as we began. He walked with Rabbi Sonnenfeld in Jerusalem's Kikar Shabbat, where they saw people publicly desecrating Shabbat. Rabbi Sonnenfeld then addressed him, Rabbi, before when things were better, people didn't act like this, but now look at what they're doing. And Rav Kook didn't respond. They walked a bit further. They reached Gabe Beninon, where Rav Kook said to Sonnenfeld, look, here, thousands of years ago, they sacrificed children. We all did human sacrifices. It was here. Look, today, no one does that. See how the world has improved. It depends, like Moses says, I'm giving you the blessing and the curse. Everything depends on your perspective, on quantum theory, on reality. Everything depends on how we see it. And as you said, the world is going in a better direction. We have to have hope that things will get better. And along with everything, they share positive messages. Also, what happens in Israel and globally, Israel isn't only war or problems. The army has helped in all natural and non-natural disasters around the world. I was in Honduras or in Turkey and in all those places, or in Ukraine, where the Israeli army also participated as part of helping the world, and in many other things they are doing around the world. So Israel is not a problem. Israel is not war. Israel is much more than all of this.